entire chat. So if you were just joining us for the first time, please make sure to change your chat settings to all panelists and attendees. Couple more people to come in. We'll wait for Doug, and then we'll get this episode kicked
Is
off.
Mr. Grattan back with us yet?
He is not. Oh, wait, there he is. Let's let him in the room. And we're just going to wait on Doug here. Pop back in. I think Doug is resetting.
Hello.
Good morning.
How are you?
Good.
Good.
We're just waiting. Doug is resetting, I think.
Mr. Grattan, thank you for joining us today.
Of course. How are you?
Great. I was just saying, if you're familiar or unfamiliar with the Zoom settings, I'm sure we're all familiar at this point. You can change your settings to all panelists. That way, if you're answering questions or anything like that, or you see someone direct a question to you, you can your response goes to the classroom.
Understood.
So we're waiting on Doug to rejoin, and then we'll just we'll get things kicked off.
Well, I know I got the beach motif, but it looks like I'm the only one with a sunburn. Everybody else looks. Yeah. Okay.
You back to our episode of the summer. I definitely got more sun than I need in my life. I was orange midsummer.
This is not what it's supposed to be, but that's okay. I have other issues, far worse. Somebody told me I'm beginning to lose my hair.
I think Doug
anyone who's just now joining us, we are waiting for Doug to join us, and then we will get things kicked off.
He's here.
Hi.
So we can
wonderful.
Let's kick this off. So
wonderful. Would you like me to get things moving? And I'll pass over, and then we can get our guest introduced. Episode 53. Thank you for everyone who has been with us from the beginning and who has joining us for the first time on our fall semester. So technically this is episode number 2 of fall semester, as we take a deeper dive in the advanced touring process and tour management 101. If you are just now joining us, please make sure to change your chat settings to all panelists and attendees. Today, we'll be discussing building the tour 2.0 and taking a deeper dive. MJ will be introducing our special guests who are with us today, which we're truly excited about. Yesterday was an amazing conference to run through it with all today. MJ, pass it over to you, and we'll get the episode started.
Good morning, afternoon, evening, everybody. Wherever you're at. Today's episode will be on building the tour 2.0. Before you can advance anything, you need to actually put it together. And our guests today are production coordinator Debbie Taylor, who will momentarily tell you the numerous people she has worked with. Chris Grattan, who is currently production director for Justin Bieber. And Elliot Saltzman, who is director of touring and production for Trans-Siberian Orchestra. So I'm just going to take us right into it. And because everybody has really interesting stories and different ways they work building their tours. So we'll hop right into Debbie. So Debbie, tell us a little bit about yourself and who you've worked with.
I started working in the industry in Australia and really cut my teeth on festival work. I worked with Big Day Out and Splendor in the Grass and pretty much did every single role on a festival that you can think of, gathering as much experience as I possibly could. I also worked on international and Australian tours as they came through the country too. So I worked on every show from club size up to huge touring festivals and stadium shows. And then I got my lucky break and got taken on an international tour. That's been approximately about 10 years I've been internationally touring, and I've had the joy of working with Black Sabbath, Ozzy, AC/DC, U2, Rolling Stones, and Guns N' Roses.
And you were telling us yesterday that you were trained by some of the legends.
I have again been absolutely blessed to have had the most amazing mentors in both touring and production coordination capacity. I learned from the absolute best, so Laurie Tierney, Wendy Over Stevenson, Helen Campbell, Kate Stewart in Australia, and I've also worked with some of the best production managers and directors who've allowed me to learn, grow, and have taught me the way.
Cool. And so what is your role? We touched on in our production coordinator episode, it was like a few episodes ago, on big tours like you do, the production coordinator has an active role in building the tour in conjunction with the TM and PM. So what is your role in building your tours?
It varies. I do both the production coordination and the production assistant role.
Mm-hmm.
And I enjoy being able to flip between those two roles. I think you've covered this in the past before about being able to do different roles, gaining different experiences. I think being able to step into other roles really allows you to be better at your own role and touring in general.
And that's a touch point for us on this webinar. Again, diversifying your skill set. There is no better way to be well prepared in this business than to know all the different jobs on the tour.
Oh, it also, I think it allows you to be much better at your job too. It's amazing when I slip back into the production assistant role, how much I'd forgotten how difficult that role can be, how busy it can be. And it puts you in touch with a whole different set of people, which is great. So I mean, usually the production coordinator, and with building the tours, it's a production coordinator who usually has a little bit more input than a production assistant, depending on the size of the tour. But the way that I like to see it and the way that I work with my production managers tends to be that I look after the human side of the production team. So I take care of everything that the crew needs. So travel, visas, transport, catering. We like to kind of look at it as everything that allows a crew to be able to work to their best abilities.
True or false, Deb, do you consider a production coordinator on a tour of that size like the Sea Party tour manager?
I would like to think so. There's an awful lot of organization, taking care, and again, very lucky to have an awful lot of autonomy in my role.
Yeah, and when you first take on a tour as a production coordinator and you're helping build it, does it vary from tour to tour?
Oh yeah, absolutely. So I suppose the first question to ask yourself when you start any tour and any role, I think, is to actually find out your scope of work, to find out what the expectations of your role are, what falls under your umbrella. It's a very all hands on deck kind of industry, but ultimately you are judged on your role and your ability to do your role first and foremost. That then provides the framework for what you're going to have to do. Especially in regards to building the tour. Building the tour is probably my favorite part of touring.
Mm-hmm.
It's that exciting part. It's that time when you start to flesh out where you're going to be for the next year, couple of years. It's that excitement. It's also the ability in a controlled environment to be able to start planning before you get to the crazy.
Yeah. Yes, exactly.
What crazy? I don't know what you're even talking about.
to dive in, and I loved the phase system you had talked about. Can you run through the 4 phases of the building process?
So the way that I like to do it, and everybody is very different. With experience, you'll find different ways of working, and most of it is through experience. It didn't work on this tour, we'll try it differently on this tour, we'll add something else to it. It's all through experience. So what I would say is, if you're new and you are starting out and you aren't experienced in maybe a style of touring, yet you get involved in the in the building process, is ask questions. Find somebody who has done it before, speak to your PM, your production director, get all the advice you can. There's no shame in asking the questions. It's far better to do that than get further down the line and then realize you haven't done something, you've missed something. It's then very hard to fix it once you start rolling. But the way that I like to do it is it tends to fall into four different phases. I've put together a spreadsheet, so I wonder if I can actually share this screen.
You can. If you click the share screen button, it should give you the option to pick a specific document. There you go.
Okay.
Good deal.
Yep. There it is.
So I'm very old school. Everything for me is in Excel spreadsheets. And I make hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of spreadsheets. It's my double check system. It's my fail safe system. But this is the sheet that it really starts off with. So phase one is pretty much, I've taken most of the information out of this sheet, but phase one is what you see in the green. It's when you get given your dates, you get given your cities and your types of venues. So as you can see, it's pretty basic. You literally fill in where you're going to be, on what day, and what type of venue that you're playing at. And that's really important for what's going to come next, whether it's a stadium show, an arena show, festival show, promo show. Putting that information in first is really going to help you fill in the rest of the blanks as they come. So you get given the dates. I like to send those dates off once I've had a real cursory glance to all the people that I'm going to be working with who have an input. So visa agents, travel agents, bus companies. And that's really before you start working on it, because that allows them to flag any potential issues that you're going to have. Visas in regard to timings, travel agents in regard to very busy periods of time, and the bus company, first and foremost, get your buses on hold if you think you're going to be able to do a bus tour as soon as you have your dates. Then we move on to phase two, which is in the yellow. It's where the bare bones of phase one start taking a little bit more shape, get a little bit more flesh on them. I think you touched on this in your session one, building a tour with Guy Sykes, in regards to being able to, we've all got Google Maps. We can all run a mileage and then kind of work out, based on that very rudimentary mileage and timings, where we're going to be able to fly, where we're going to be able to bus, and where we're going to reach any potential problems of being able to get to load-ins or get to cities on time. And that's really going to start helping you work out your travel pattern. You may have to lose the buses at some point, and you might have to fly to some cities. You might even have to charter in some places. But that will start basically filling in information on these sheets as you go. So as you can see, I've got the activity, and I can fill in most of those, you know, where we have a load in, where we have a show day, where we have a day off. Very rare, but you never know, it might come up. So I put in the distance here, and then the travel time. I always work back. I'm terrible with time zones, so I work out the time zones that we're changing to. And then really, this is the most important column here, the estimated arrival time. If that's going to blow out and you're not going to make your load in, then it's time to start looking at flights. While we're also doing this, we're kind of starting to look at the deal memos as they come through too. That's really important for festival shows and shows in certain countries or regions like South America or Southeast Asia, where your travel is going to be taken care of by somebody else. That really then negates having to fill in some of these bits of information, because you rely on your local contacts for more information. We also start filling out, so I have a bus fly column here, just so I know which one we're flying, which one we're busing to. Start to fill in the hotel information. This more for me is this yellow section I fill in, and then I will remove this from this sheet and send it off to my travel agent. But the check-in and the check-out dates here in these columns are probably the most important thing for your travel agent to have. It kind of really shows where you're going to be needing early check-ins, late checkouts. And that's what your travel agent will really start basing their hotel search on. It can always be amended later on. But for me, I suppose in phase 2, it's getting the key information out to the people that are going to assist you in putting this tour together, which is your travel agent mainly. Your travel agent and your bus company, whoever's doing your transport and travel. Once I pull this section out for the travel agent, I start adding more information into their sheet. But being as anal as I am, all the information that the travel agent will then give me will go straight back into this sheet. I like to have one master sheet with the most basic but essential information in it. It's a go-to sheet. It's your itinerary before your itinerary is printed. That's pretty much phase 2. We have a phase 2.5, which kind of sits at the same time as this, but affects a very different element of the tour, and that is your visa agent. If you're going to countries where you are going to require visas, and that's more countries than you would think, having a good visa agent who can give you a timeline is imperative. It will set the timings and the deadlines on so many things. Visas are getting easier and harder at the same time. A lot of visa applications are going online, so the process is much quicker. However, the information that they're requesting is a lot more detailed. So whereas we're not having to send passports, a lot of passports in, which saves you time, the actual gathering of information can take a very long time. If you, perchance say, end up going to South America, where there are so many visas that you need to apply for on the countries that you'll be going through, that can set your deadline for crew information. You might need to have your crew set a lot more in advance and a lot closer to the time than you would do if you were going to Europe, for example. Although Russia obviously is very different. So I would, phase 2.5, I would contact your visa agent, get their timings and use their expertise on the places that you're going to and what you're going to need to get from your crew. Work back from a definite deadline of when you need your visas in hand. If you're sending an advance party across, they're going to need their visas first, and then start putting together the info that you need from your crew. I tend to use my visa agent's questionnaire and work very much in conjunction with my visa agent in that regard. They have their own form. It's not a Google form, but it's something very similar. It's very easy to use. And if I have extra questions that I want from my crew, like merch sizes or frequent flyer numbers, I will request that the visa agent puts that into their form, and we'll get that all done in one go. One hit, easier to ask your crew for one set of information. Also at this point, most important, more than anything else, is check that the core crew that you have, that you know of, have a valid passport. And a valid passport needs to have 6 months validity from the date that you are going to enter a country. It's not that it's expiring in 2 months. It needs to have 6 months validity on it. So it's always worth checking that, and it's always worth checking that they have pages blank too. I think a lot of people forget that, but
yep.
Yeah,
and facing blank pages as well.
Yeah. And we've done the trick before where we know that somebody's running out of pages and we'll try and put the post-it notes to try and save those from being stamped. Look, your passport it's the tool of your trade, and it needs to be in good condition, and it needs to be valid, and it needs to have 3 pages.
I always
It makes our life very difficult, and it can make your life very difficult if you don't have that.
I always suggest crew moving forward, if they're getting new passports, to always do a 52-page book. There's just no reason not to do it, and you're going to save yourself a lot of time and hassle for the future, and have more than enough pages for any type of visas, especially visas where they have to take over an entire page or 2 worth of visa documents. So,
or as Mary was saying, they want them facing each other to do the stamp next to the visa too.
And I think it's strong these days, especially the Americans that are allowed to, is all have 2 passports. The long form and the short form is a must. Everybody I employ has to have 2 passports. We're in the countries that allowed to have it, because we need to send them off oftentimes in the middle of a tour and other dates get added.
Absolutely. Having the British passport system is amazing. Getting a second British passport it's valid for 10 years.
And for students, like, if you're unsure how you do 2 passports, in some cases where our touring is super heavy, I have 2 passports myself. I may be touring in Asia and I have to go to India from there, or I have to go to Africa. It could be anywhere. Sometimes they need a physical passport to be there. And those are some gray areas where they will issue you 2 passports because you're currently traveling international, where you need visas, and you have to have visas issued. So do your research. All that information is on our visa websites that you can check out, and consult your visa company, whoever you're working with too.
US, it's legal to have both now. Before you used to have to manipulate, but now it is legal to have 2.
Yeah. Can you do it even without a trip coming up, or you just have to take advantage of?
Nope, you can do it no matter what now.
Oh, that's great.
As of 2 years ago.
Good to know. I haven't needed one, but now I should just do it.
It really does take the stress and the pressure out.
Yeah.
But also, being a production coordinator, it's probably the fundamental question to ask when you get your crew: which passport are you using? If you do have 2 passports, it's really important to find out the correct one. Don't just guess.
Yeah.
But also to work through that with your crew to work out whether that is the one that you definitely want.
Yeah.
And you want to double confirm it, because the worst thing that could happen is you've gone through all this paperwork assuming that this passport that you know and have in your records is the one that's going to be used, and then someone tries to make an entry with a separate passport, and it's messy.
Especially for artists.
Yes. Well, I also want to point out too, the reason I don't have 2 US passports is I have passports from different countries, because I'm a dual citizen. So that's another thing to check as well, because sometimes if Debbie's doing visas, it can be more, depending on your routing, it can be more advantageous to do a visa for a certain country in a certain country's passport. But it can depend on a lot of elements. So that's another thing that you want to check.
There's so much that goes into it, which is why having a great visa agent is such a bonus, because they can give you all of that information. That information changes. Visa requirements change. They can change even when you're applying, like during the process of applying for visas. Having somebody that you can trust and gives you good information in a timely fashion is one of the most important things. So that's phase 2. Should we go back to the sheet? Let's see if we can go back to that. Whilst we're also in phase 2, I like to try and start getting the riders together. It can be slightly problematic because sometimes there isn't a lot of information floating around, but at least you can start getting a generic style rider in place and start gathering the information to make it a bit more personalized. Nothing worse than leaving your rider to the last minute, or getting your rider out to the people that count and need it at the last minute. I'm a big fan. It's very much based on experience, weighing up, giving people too little information, but not giving them any information at all. And I think that's 2.5. I think also in this period, we can start gathering the budget figures. Again, it's an element of dealing with something that you're not quite sure what you're dealing with, but you need to have some kind of information. Your business manager is probably going to be hounding you for some kind of figures that they need to work with. At this point, I again speak to your travel agent. Experience will tend to tell you what you can put in for a nightly hotel price, but again, check with your agent to make sure that you're not, you know, in New York during a festival, or in Europe during summer, during convention season, which seems to be,
or some odd citywide convention.
And Europe seems to be that way every summer now.
Right. And also, another thing that I've been coming up against recently with travel agents is make sure that when you're doing your budget and you're reporting your numbers, that the tax is incorporated, because I'm receiving documents lately from travel agents that they call budgets, where they've got room and other charges that may be, you know, that may be associated with the hotel, but the tax, which could be anywhere from 10 to 12 to 14 to 15%. Plus there might be a, you know, in hotels these days, there could be a tourist tax or a city tax on top of the sales tax. This is a number that adds up. So I just want to caution everybody, make sure that when you're doing your hotel numbers that you have the add-ons and the tack-ons and every little thing.
I experienced this the last tour that I did, and it was a horrible shock.
Yeah.
Really horrible shock.
And you are, you know, sort of thinking that your travel agent is going to deliver you a cost all in, and then suddenly it's a rude awakening to find out that your numbers. So just for you guys, make sure you say, or you ask, is tax in this? Where's the tax?
Moving on to phase 3, which is where it really starts to take shape. It's where we really start to flesh out a tour. Again, some of this information in phase 2 and even in phase 1, you might not have. You might be waiting to slip in a date somewhere along in the calendar for a promo show. The hotel information won't come back until you've made a decision with your travel agent. It's still really important, I think, to start getting the information into some form of organization where you can read it really easily. And then you can go back and start filling it in. But I think when we start to move to phase 3, the information comes in dribs and drabs. So phase 3 for me is where you start looking at your day-to-day activities. It's where you really start to look at, okay, we're moving from this city to this city. Your production manager, director at this point will probably have their load-in times, very crucial for festival shows. You are sometimes going to be able to load in the night before, sometimes in the morning before. Sometimes you're going to be loading in a couple of hours before you actually play, depending on your position on the bill. Once you start getting that information from your production manager, you can really start walking through day-to-day activities. We're going to do a walkthrough here. We can't do a walkthrough, but we're going to do an early load-in. We're not going to make it in time for normal load-in, so we're going to be pushing to a late load-in. And that's where we really start filling out these sections. Once you have those activities, and I scroll back, I actually have the activity here. You can really start filling in the transport that you require. Do you need ground transport? That'll refer back to your deal memo. Who's covering that? Who do you need to speak to for that information? Can your buses, after doing a long drive, can they take you from the hotel to the venue? Or are they out of hours? Are you going to need to organize runners? And as soon as you think about things like that, that's when I start to kind of fill this column in, even putting in notes where I'm going to have to refer back to it. It's the same for catering. As you can see, I work through every day we're on site. There's a breakfast, lunch, dinner, and after show. Do we need those things? Are there any notes in those things? Like, are we going to have a reduced crew for an early load-in, so therefore we need less breakfast numbers? got the show timings in here. That again, if you can get that from a promoter rep, really helpful. That'll work back your loading times, working your meal times, sound check times. And then obviously we have the note section, which usually when a tour starts, this is completely full of information. I've learned through previous experience that I have to write everything down. I even, in my note section, tend to write things about why decisions have been made. If you're building a tour 6 months out, 8 months out, sometimes you're making decisions that are based on really relevant information, but by the time you come to actually advance a show or do the show, that piece of information has been forgotten and you've forgotten why you've made a decision. I've done it so many times. And you know you've made it for the right decision, you just can't work out why. So everything goes in the notes section. It saves me having to sort out the post-it notes on my desk or the handwritten notes. If I put it all in here straight away, it's all in one place. And that's pretty much it for phase 3. I tend to, once I've got my day-to-day activities written, I'll then run it by the production manager, probably twice, so that we can walk through each day and see if anything's missing. And then I'll walk through it with the production assistant too, just for another set of eyes to see if they see something that I haven't seen.
Amazing. Debbie, it was really quite I feel like it was a privilege to get the brain drain from you, because I've always admired and respected your work, and I feel like I'm geeking out that I get to see your spreadsheet and your flow of work. And thank you. Thank you.
I tend to, no matter what size show I'm working on, I always do one of these sheets now.
Yeah.
Even if I'm just if I'm the production assistant and not organizing the travel, I'll do the blue section for the transport and the catering myself. I feel it's really helped me to work out how I work. And then the bigger tours you do, the more columns you just slip in. If you're doing a stadium tour, you'd slip in steel columns.
Thank you.
How your steel team are traveling, and what days they need catering.
Amazing.
And obviously phase 4.
Yep, is advancing.
So we move on to the next stage.
Right on. And we're going to throw it over to Mark, who is going to chat with Mr. Grattan about big pop.
Actually,
things.
I think 5-1 is picking that one.
Actually, I'm going to pass the baton to 5-1.
Oh, 5-1.
Well, I'm going to pass the baton to myself. So, so Mr. Grattan, so glad that you joined us. And Debbie, thanks for sharing all that info, because I actually learned quite a bit. So Mr. Grattan, can you tell us what your process is of building the tour, and where do you actually start?
Hi, morning all. First off, thank you for having me. I start with music. That's what we do. So the way I start, every tour is different. Either if I'm the production manager, tour director, tour designer, what I tend to wear multiple hats. We can take the present one where I tour direct, co-design, NPM for Justin. We always start with music. So as the album's coming together, I like to sneak in the studio, catch some of the vibe of the songs, et cetera, what's going on. And then when the album comes to completion, we usually have a listening party for everybody that's going to be on the tour, the designers, the engineers, and then we start the process. So on this, we go over to the boss's house every once a week. We call it our tea meeting at 8 a.m. And we talk about the music and what his visuals are and his outlook on it, and mine and my co-designer Nick as well. So we start with the music. Then we start designing. Nick will peel off and start choreographing and thinking about dancers. I'll start thinking about engineering and what the possibilities are of the tricks and stuff that we want for the tour. As quickly as I can with that, we get into the deal memos and the budgets. So many tours over design and get way ahead of themselves, and the tours actually lose a lot of money. So the show may look like a Vegas extravaganza, but it's going to lose a lot of money. So I like to get into the budget as quickly as possible, look at the deal sheets, see what we have for income, and try to control either myself and my partner or whoever else the designer might be. Oftentimes these days, in the last 10 years, I see a lot of tours make the mistake of starting with a designer, not the music or the artist. And then all of a sudden we have $100 million design in 500 trucks that will never fit into any building in the world. And you got to start over anyway. So in lieu of that, and saving the stress of me having to have those discussions, because it always comes back to production management and tour managers to have the discussion with the designers saying no, which, as we all know, does not go well. So as early on as we can get a hold of that, I like to do that and make music the first and most important part. Then the budget, then the design. I love working with an artist that's involved in these steps instead of one that is not, because then when they come in later, they say, oh, I would have never built that in purple. I want that to be yellow. So the earlier you can get your artists involved as well. And I also use management in their position, and the business manager in their position. It's my job to build it and make the artist happy. If I see something being designed and built that's above their financial, being responsible, then I'll go to management and say, hey, Justin wants this, but it's going to cost $2 million a week to have that effect. If you don't want to lose commissions and money and percentages, maybe we should convince them to do something a little smarter or different. So use the people around you. Use your tour manager, use your production manager, your assistants, your traveling. Everybody's involved have to be financially responsible. And sometimes you have to put the ball back in the court of the manager or the business manager. That's why they're making the big dollars. So that's my base to start. Oftentimes, as soon as we get our design and picked our dancers and picked our bands, we move into rehearsals. And these would just be straight band rehearsals in one studio, dancers in another. And then we're able to walk between the studios and start actually bringing the tour together. And while we do this, that's oftentimes we start talking about special effects, video content, lifts, fly gags, all the engineering, depending on if we're going into stadiums, arenas, theaters, or any combination thereof. A lot of times these days we do multiples. We'll do stadiums, arenas, and theaters on the same tour. So you have to be able to design the tour and put the tour together to run as 3 different tours inside of one. And that's where Debbie's position is tour coordinator, whatever. She'll have a lot more columns on that when we know what crew does all three shows, which one just does the stadiums, which one just do the arenas. And oftentimes there is a separate crew just for the stadiums and such. My coordinator and my assistant are with me the entire time, because I feel the more information everybody has, the better. I have a wide open door policy with my crews. I keep my production books on my desk. Everybody can look at everything besides the budget. My head rigger and most of my crew chiefs are in my office every day, looking at the buildings coming up, looking at my advance sheets. I have very tight advance sheets. I have what's called the 1-pager, which everybody gets to see. That includes your steel heights, sizes of your doors coming in and out, how many docks, catering locations, such, everything that you'll need to know on a daily basis. And I have a book with my cover page is the 1-pager. And then as you flip through the cities, you get deeper into it, you get more and more information, right down to the building venue specs. And I love to share that with the crew, and all my crews and my crew chiefs know that they can always find that information there.
So another question, does tour income kind of help you formulate how much you're going to spend on the design, and are there any expenses that can somewhat inform how you build your tour?
Yeah, everything's based on income, or should be, based on what you're getting a day. Most agents and most management have a certain percentage they try to hit for profit or expenditures. Like ideally, you don't spend more than 25% on your daily income. And that can be based on all sorts of things. The way we do load-ins and crews, the way I load in, you're never going to see me in a building at 6 in the morning at all. People do all these pre-rigs and crazy stuff. Great. You over-designed your show. If you're into pre-rigs, you're spending a ton of extra money. Unless it's stadiums, which is totally different if you're just doing stadiums. And of course, you have all your pre-days. You can have up to a week ahead of time if need be. On an arena tour, I don't ever see the reason for a pre-rig. I've done up to 40 trucks in a day, and I don't understand the pre-rig thing. So, but you have to plan appropriately. The way you engineer the shows, the way you design the show, you need to think about what loads in first, second, third. You know, how many entrances on these arena floors do you have? How many docks do you have? Are you dealing with the ramps and forklifts, etc.? I believe strongly that a tour should be in 4 to 6, and it should be out in 2 within the first 2 weeks, or somebody's doing something wrong. So first 2 weeks, we have some grace periods and maybe one pre-rig in there. I hope not, usually not, but you need to design it and organize it and hire appropriately so you have the right people that understand what they're doing to be able to get it in 4 to 6, out in 2. Sleep is something that people forgot. We're not machines. We're not, you know, we need sleep. So the way I like to work, 8 o'clock chalk talk, which means you walk around and mark the stage, meet the building manager, everything. 9 o'clock rigging. Everybody else, get the hell off the floor. Let the riggers do their job. Get things in. You will save hours and hours and hundreds of thousands of dollars a day by letting your riggers have their own hour. Get your rigging going during that hour. Everybody else can go meet and catering, talk about the setup for the day. Look at your trucks, look at your storage, mark. People that don't mark storage, another thing I don't understand. Everybody should have a piece of chalk in the morning. Claim your space. Where's Video World? Where are the lighting deads going? Where are the lighting guys fixing the lights? Where's this, that, and everything else going? Right down to the last thing that comes off the truck needs to have a home as soon as it's emptied. Organize that. Take your time to do that right. Give your stage managers the information they need. In doing so, I'll do an 8 o'clock chalk talk, 9 o'clock rig. Now we're loading in at 10 in the morning. That means the majority of your crew, not your crew chiefs, because they do the long hours with me, but the regular crew all get asleep till like 9, and they get up and then they get to eat breakfast. So they're strong. When they come in at 10 in the morning, they should be refreshed. If they chose to stay up all night drinking on the bus, we'll deal with that. That will come out. You'll find those characters and they'll go bye-bye. But you have to do that. And if you're loading in at 10 in the morning and you're being grumpy, then you're not meant to be a roadie. Like if you're loading at 10, come in, be strong, keep that smile on your face. I'll have you back in your bed by 2 in the morning.
10
That's like getting to sleep
10 o'clock feels like a holiday to me.
I was like, that's great.
What? 8 o'clock
like,
chalk?
This will never work. This will never work. And I'm like, okay, you get twice the amount of work out of a happy roadie and a slept roadie than if you're beating them in the head. You're loading in at 6, and then you stand there with your thumb up your butt at 3 in the afternoon with nothing to do. No, thank you. And you paid overtime because you started for 8 with IATSE. You're going into 3 meals. My IATSE breakfast call is so small every day, it's ridiculous. Wow. You know, and my crew breakfast, because I go right into lunch at 11 o'clock. So you can spread it out. You can save money on catering, save money on local labor. And the local laborers, you don't think the unions aren't happy when they see a 9 o'clock or 10 o'clock instead of a 6 o'clock? You don't want to start off in New York, Chicago, Pittsburgh, Ohio, any of those with grumpy guys at 6 in the morning and gals. Let me tell you, it will be the worst day.
And kudos to you for all the kudos. Yeah, all the kudos for being concerned about who's sleeping and not wearing your crew.
It changes everything. Doug, what were you saying?
Oh, I was just going to say, if you're making that work on that show, then there's no reason why everyone else can't be doing it on their show, because you're at the biggest, you're at the highest point there. And I was just going to ask you real quick if you could just explain what a pre-rig is for those people who maybe don't know.
Absolutely. First off, you have to take care of your crews, and coming in late does make a huge difference. What a pre-rig is for the students out there is if you're loading in, you can go in the night before, often they do it, and you start with chalk talk. You mark out all your rigging points, you hang all your motors, and you hang as much stress as that you might have, or your mother grid or whatever level. And this gets you about 3 to 4 hours ahead of your call the next morning. But it's usually very expensive. It's usually a nighttime call. It usually means additional gear, usually means additional trucks. I don't follow it.
Well, Chris, this is a great segue into something that you shared with us in our pre-chat, how you're building your tour towards wellness and mental health for your crew. And you had shared something about New Calm, which was eye-opening to me. So can you share that with some of our guests today?
I would start with first, I'm 52. I've been doing this since I was 16. When I started this with some of y'all's bosses on this Zoom call, it was all big male bully session. Like, you had to be a tough guy. You had to do this. There was a lot of hazing involved. If you forgot a piece of steel or a piece of gear accidentally, that put it in your bunk, you'd sleep with it for a week. It was very male, raw, we're animals, you know. And over the years, and I bought into that. I was a huge asshole for a long time because that was the beast. That was how we were trained to be. Over the years, I realized how much that does not work, in the screaming and the belittling and the talking down to, and all the horrible things that were in our environment were making it worse. What I found is treating everybody better and with respect, and dealing with your crew chief. It's more like a military. You have generals, your lieutenants, your sergeants, boo, boo, boo. Dealing with people in that order, and dealing with your crew chiefs and letting them deal with their people underneath them, and they hire who they want to. I don't need to pick everybody because, oh, I like hanging out with Bob. I want my crew chiefs to be happy, right? So I digress there a little bit, David. But the NUCOM thing is, we don't sleep enough, and it's not good for your body. You're supposed to sleep 6 to 8 hours. We don't normally do that whatsoever. Just before this break, I started working with a company called NUCALM, NUCALM. It is a sleeping app and a device, if you will. You have a small disc that goes on your pulse of your wrist, and it puts you into gamma sleep. Every 25 minutes underneath this sleeping app is worth 2.5 hours of gamma. So with Justin and Haley being involved in our tour and making wellness a very important part of the tour, which we can get back to, I found this company. They have over 100,000 professional sports athletes, from European football players to the Blackhawks to the Golden State Warriors, Chicago. Everybody's on it now. And it increases your actual sleep. So what we've done, and Justin's given me money to, is having a suite, which will be our crew room, with either a massage bed or a cot or whatever in it, with NUCOM set up. So you can go in. So when the riggers are done, they can go to the NUCOM suite and go under for 25 minutes, and they just took a 2.5 hour gamma nap. And for you to know, gamma is the deepest sleep you can get, and you need that every day. So we're trying to find ways to enhance how we tour and the wellness of it. And between Justin and Haley, we've come up with lots of different ways to do that on the road. You know, we've never been taken care of. It's like Justin's like, how do we make this better? Like, everybody's always broken, everybody's always tired. Justin went crazy the last tour. No one takes care of anybody. And I'm like, Justin, you have 10 people around you. I have 168 people on Justin, and we have, you know, me, my coordinator, you know, there's like 5 of us taking care of everybody. That doesn't make sense. So he's like, great, what do? How do we make it so you guys get more sleep? You know, we can't change the hours we work, you know, besides the 3 or 4 hours I told you about. We still have a lot of work to do. So that's where the NUCOM thing came in, so people can actually get rest. So between what I do in the morning, having these suites, I think we're at least upping the ante to give people a better chance of being healthy. At the same time, he's paying for 2 positions for people to come out with us. So we're going to have either a trainer, a yoga, something like that. And then we're going to have a mental health person on the tour as well. Just cruise around and talk to people, you know, because it's needed. We don't have health and human resources on the road. It doesn't exist. We just go out there and get beat on, you know. So no one thinks about our food. No one thinks about our green print. Nobody thinks that they just think we're just machines. Oh, someone wore out and snapped. He or she is going to go either, you know, pop themselves off or go home and get divorced or go through something horrible. This is a beautiful job. We get to be around music. We get to do what we want every day. So let's be healthy about it. No one's protecting us, so we have to start doing that ourselves.
Thank you.
Chris, can you also tell us real quick, sorry, Adrian, about your 1 hour per day family time?
Yeah, this is something that Haley came up with, actually, and we're going to implement on this next tour. Is one of the biggest problems is, and I do it myself, I have children, I have had a divorce, you know, I have an amazing wife now and wouldn't change anything. But how many of us on this call have ever been like, oh my God, 1 o'clock in the morning, we just loaded a truck. effing call my wife today. I forgot to call my daughters. Oh my God, it was my niece's birthday. That's not cool. That's not good. The only way you're going to keep your family healthy is to have some communication. So we decided there's going to be a family hour every day. It'd be 4 to 5, 5 to 6, whatever it is, after we've let the locals go, after we're in the pocket ready for the night. An hour, go call your wife, call your husband, call your kids, call your dog, whatever. It's an hour to say, it was there to remind you every day that you need to do this. So we're helping you as much as possible to have a healthier life at home as you have on the road. So at the end of the tour, we're hoping that we get to a point where we don't have quite as many separations or divorce or bad things happening when our 2.5 years of being away from our family comes to an end. So thank God for Haley. That was her concept and we're using it.
Wow, good for her.
Yeah.
Thank you so much for all that, Chris. It's it's super great to hear that we're all looking together towards a future where we're not getting sicker, getting more unhealthy, eating the worst crap, sacrificing friends and family and relationships and our health.
Yeah, and food's a big part of it. You just said it. There's no reasons.
Yeah, there's
no reason we don't spend a little bit more money on our food. For those production managers and tour managers say, fuck that, give them hot dogs and hamburgers. But when they come in, they're having a 5-course meal for dinner. No.
Right.
Yeah. I also think
a healthy breakfast, lunch, and dinner. That doesn't mean there's not going to be soda. That doesn't mean they're not going to be meat or anything. We still offer you everything. We're not your parents, but we're going to give you healthy options too.
Right.
And I think that it's great that, there is a reason that we're talking about this stuff as part of building the tour, because you are trying to be part of the, forefront of putting this into the building of the tour, not just like, hey, we're 6 months in and everybody's stressed out, we got to do something. It's like, this is becoming a real part of building a tour.
And humans are not an afterthought.
Right. And we've done it as far as I've got CA and A&G involved in as well. Like the Newcom thing, every tour should be doing that for the safety of the tour. I mean, who wants a rigger going up tired in the morning? Who wants, their guy running transportation to park the trucks or buses the wrong way and you're running people. I mean, there's 100 reasons why we have to do this. And the costs are low enough that, great. So is it a promoter cost? Is it a band cost? Where does that come from? Because there is some cost in that. The 2 extra people I'm carrying, the hotel nights, everything. It's a very small amount of money at the end of the day compared to what the tour budget is. And we've had zero pushback, zero. Everybody said, yeah, we'll chip in on it. So
awesome.
I think it just needs to be talked about. And I think it will come together because at the end of the day, this is an awesome business we're in and we get to listen to music always. And we're very fortunate for it. So let's make it healthy and,
Agreed. Thank you so much for that.
Of course.
So we are going to move into some really, really interesting, fascinating stuff. And we're going to get a look behind the curtain of the Trans-Siberian Orchestra workings with Elliot Saltzman. Hi, Elliot.
Hey, how you doing?
Nice to have you.
Thanks. I was sort of squirming when Chris was talking about that because our whole thing is we can't do that. We're doing matinees with 20 trucks. So we've got to chalk at 5 and do the 6 o'clock. But agree with you 100%. The crew is the most important thing. Travel with our own caterers. They get handed stuff. We have overqualified people leading. We have overqualified people in the crews. And they get taken care of financially as well as whatever is needed. And I think that's important. So good one. I'm going to look into that Newcom thing.
Pretty cool, right? A way to get our brains how to jam a 2.5-hour heavy disco nap into 20 minutes and have it really be meaningful. That's really something. Everyone take a note, Newcom. So, okay, over to TSO. For people who may not know what the phenomena of Trans-Siberian Orchestra is, can you give us the Reader's Digest version of TSO?
Yes, I can. It was something that was conceptualized by Paul O'Neill, who passed unfortunately a few years ago. His family's carrying on the torch. And it was prog rock. It was theatrical rock. It was everything. Paul O'Neill and myself, 1974 to like 1980, we worked at a company called Lieber Krebs, who managed AC/DC, Aerosmith, Ted Nugent, Parliament Funkadelic, I'm forgetting, no kidding, I'm forgetting maybe 15 other bands that are that level. So we were the ones that started doing the first festivals with the Aerosmiths, the Nugents, the Mahogany Rushes, the AC/DCs. And he always understood what it was like, because we were building at the time. You know, everything was new. Something new came out, somebody had to have it. That's what differentiated you from the next act. So his idea was, he not only wanted to put together the music, but he wanted the production to go along with it. Now, obviously, when they started, it was a little less, but it was always more than anybody else would take it to. Mm-hmm. So what it is basically is, there's 3 or 4 stories that Paul has written. There's many more, but we're using those. And we go back and forth from them. And the first part of the show is a storyline that ties in, you know, the holidays, et cetera, et cetera. And the second part of the show is really an all-out rock.
Metal jam.
Yeah. So it's a little strange, because everybody comes out in tuxedos in the beginning and everything. And then they take their jackets off and everything. And it grew so quickly, exponentially, it almost took us by surprise. 5-1, you were on one of our tours 100 years ago. Do you remember what year that was?
Yeah, I was in the very first year.
Oh, wow.
Oh, my God.
Yeah, it was me and Ray Amico.
Ray Amico. So we went from like 2 trucks to 40 trucks, you know, and we went from theaters where we'd go into the Beacon Theater with more pyro than Kiss at the Garden. We could just get away with it.
Amazing.
Know? So when things started growing bigger, and you said, can we go from the theaters to the arenas? Paul was concerned, well, I want everybody to have that special view and be involved and not sit. So I said, okay. And then we started putting our lightings and our systems, and we replicate everything in the front of house. We had front of house systems that were bigger than some of the headlining touring bands out there. So what we did
and
was,
then let me just interject for those of our students who are not aware. Trans-Siberian Orchestra is a Christmas show. It is a Christmas tour. It does not happen in the summer. You're not going to find it in February. This is your holiday rock and roll extravaganza. Just so everyone is aware.
We have in Europe and in America, we've done some smaller tours which were not holiday themed. And they did well, but this is just such a juggernaut, we kept with it. So here became the problem. The problem is we had this definite amount of time to do things.
Right.
We had the demand, but we couldn't figure out how to do it. So what we did was we had 2 different bands. We just kind of split up the main band, half went east, half went west, which is not really delineated by east and west, because sometimes the west plays Miami. But what happened was we went on to this year by year, increasing and increasing and increasing. We were up to 24 trucks, and then the new technology with the LED and everything. All of a sudden, we lost the generators and the extra trucks, and we became very conscious of what we were doing. So what it morphed into is basically anywhere from 6 to 8 weeks, sometimes a little longer. 6 to 8 weeks of touring, 2 companies, doing 105, 115 shows in that short period of time. Each band, each group, East and West, will do on a normal course of events. They will do a Wednesday single show, a Thursday single show, Friday, Saturday, and Sunday doubles.
All in different markets.
All in different markets.
So single market 1, single market 2, single market 3, market 4, you have a double matinee and an evening. Market 5, you have so that's back to back 5 times, multiple shows on your last 2.
And then we get a little crazy when it's around Christmas time, because everybody's out of school and everybody's not working. So we'll bump up that matinee to 4 matinees a week. So we'll be doing 8, 9. We had a little weather problem. We did 10 in a row. And so if you can imagine the 4 matinees, we chalk at 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock, we load in. By depending on now, because of the security issues, the doors are opening instead of an hour, they're an hour and a half, 2 hours in some places. which is very important, production coordinator and everything, to make sure you know what you're looking at before you go in there. And we'll be ready, done, pyro check, the whole 9 yards by 12 o'clock, 12:30, for doors open. We'll do the show. At the end of the show,
Matinee is what
clear the
time?
hall.
Matinee 2 o'clock?
Sometimes 2:30 or 3. It depends
Okay.
on mileage, markets, and where we're trying to go to. And then commiserately, we'll have a show at 7, 7:30, or 8
Okay.
to match that.
Elliot, how many trucks and buses per each company?
Okay, this tour, we have 20 trucks. The last tour, we had 20, not this tour, it was no this tour. We have 20 trucks per side. We have 10 buses per side. We travel caterers with us on both sides. And there is a pre-rig truck that floats around. On the east, we only use pre-rigs when we can't be there at 6 in the morning or 5 in the morning. So the East Coast's mileage is a lot better. So we may use 2, 3, 4 pre-rigs because of the necessity of mileage. We're not going to get in time. The West Coast, a lot more mileage. They'll do a lot more pre-rigs, but not in the true sense of a pre-rig. They'll just come in. If they were supposed to be there at 5 and they couldn't get there till 8, the pre-rig will be at 5 o'clock, which they normally would have been in, sometimes 4 o'clock in the morning, but never more than that. So we can get everybody in and everybody going. And
Do you have one pre-rig truck for each company, or you got one floater?
well, if we can work it out, we can. But and lately we've been pulling a separate system off the East Coast. SGPS has some stuff up in Boston, and we've been pulling that. And when our pre-rig is only what fits in one truck. So it's like 90 motors. So we could be hanging 120, 130, 150 motors, you know what I mean? But we'll only take the 90 motors. That's the only head start we get, because we don't want to start bringing in 2 trucks. We don't want that crazy expense. The guys will do it.
Okay.
And, sure, go ahead.
So, all right. So I'm going to move us along because we have a lot to
Absolutely.
cover with you. So
Sure.
what we really want to get to is the coolest thing I have heard in a long time. I did not know how you guys pulled this off. Tell us how TSO builds for this is obviously a production with gigantic production value. How are you building 2 companies at the same time?
Okay.
You're building
Well,
2 identical shows at the same time. How do you do
2
that?
identical shows at the same time. It's obviously gotten easier over the years because it's an annuity, and we can just put this one document one year, use it the next year. A lot luckier than everybody else, you know. Plus venues. 95% of the time, it's the same venues. Sometimes the East and West will cross. Brian Hartley, who's our show designer, production designer, works very closely with me. He's between this tour, 20 years with me, and Joan Jett, 12 years. So Brian and I worked 32 years together, which we'll get into later about the continuity and why we're able to pull this off. So Brian will give me a design end of March, April. I'll look at the design. Adam Lind, Kenny Kaplan Management in New York. Family will take a look at everything. Always sign off because Brian's brilliant and it works out. We'll take it, then we'll start setting up our first meeting. And our first meeting is usually in Vegas. They're all in Vegas, the SGPS, and all the vendors will fly in. And not only the vendors, but the account reps, the crew chiefs. We'll have 14, 15 people in a room when we present Brian's drawings. He also makes a little movie so everybody can see it. And we'll sit in that room and we will talk and we will go over things. And then we'll set up the next meeting a month later. And we're a little more into it. And the thing with being able to pull off matinees and the schedule we do is a lot of prefab and integration. So that's why we have these crew chiefs there and we have the people there, because they know that this pyramid that goes 30 feet in the air is going to be SGPS, you know, with automation. It's going to be pyro, it's going to be lasers, it's going to be light, and it's going to be video, all in this one little unit front of house. So everybody knows that they have to work together, no egos, and make sure that everything flows. Okay.
The integration that you're talking about is very interesting. Can you kind of give us a little bit of the finite part of how important the integration is and why?
Well, if we can't get everything to flow like we need it to flow, we're not going to be able to make those matinees. Sometimes I've looked at Brian, we've talked and everything, we go, yes, or Paul used to say, can't we just add 4 more lifts in the middle of there? I said, yes, if we were only doing evening shows, 1 show a day. So the integration becomes super important. The first year the Sharpies came out, we got the first 20 or 20 each coast in America.
And defined for those of us who are not light, a Sharpie?
Okay, a Sharpie is
not a marker.
Small,
not a marker.
Yeah, very small, very bright, can burn a computer, very bright light, and it bangs for your buck. It looks great. It moves, it dances, it does whatever you want to do. And so next year, of course, we had to have 80 aside. Brian had a design where it was like half circles and everything. So then we realized they'd have to put these 80 lights on the truss every day. Can't do that. We can't do that. So Eric Pierce goes, and also we needed to go over, if it was going to ride, we needed to go over. Eric Pierce says, I got it. And he just fabricated 160 of these little tiny brackets that had swivel, boom, and we were able to use it. If not, we weren't going to be able to do that. So most of our trussing, I say 80% of our tours is all custom. Everything's custom fab. So when we get the layers of, we want to put an audience scanning laser in this video wall. Where do we put it? That's why it's so important. Airspace, which is when you look up, and see what you have available. Our airspace is nil. Everything is chock-a-block from front to back. So the integration of putting that layer of a special effects drawing on top of everything, we get to see if, that's not going to work because you're going to start burning things or people. So the integration is very important. I love having really smart people in the same room. Todd Johnson, Claire Global Sound may bring up something about, guys, I looked at that. If you move that truss 2 feet back, he's not a lighting guy. He's not but he's a guy that's been around so long that he understands the problems we have.
Amazing.
So the next step is 3 or 4 of these meetings until we feel confident. We start getting the quotes in, the bids in, everything looks good. Jimmy Pettinato, my production manager on the East, Jeff Baguse, my production manager on the West. They start getting motor counts, weights, figuring things out. Our crew, which we have about a 90% return. And when we get somebody new, every single crew is vetted. We have so many, on one tour, we'll have 3 production managers, 4 production managers, 10 crew chiefs, 8 stage managers. They're not all being stage managers and production managers. You'll have 4 lighting crew chiefs on the lighting crew. You'll have a stage manager and a production manager on one of the other crews. Why? Because it's a challenge. It's work in November, December when nobody used to work and now everybody's working. And they get treated well, very well. Okay. And so we have this return, this incredible return that enables us to be able to do these matinees, which is kind of tough. So we want
to move through these conversations to the point where we're now starting to put this monster into reality. How do you make that happen?
Okay, so the next step when we're all done is September. I have my production managers, my production coordinators, Dave Como, our other tour manager on the West Coast. They all come to New York. We all sit there. We book all our flights. We get our books together. We all work on Google Docs, so sharing of information is integral for us.
Right. Okay.
We all know what we're doing. We have meetings every day. We sit, we run through documents, we run through things. So we're sure we have everything covered. Even though we've done it 100 times before, it's never always the same.
And this is one of your final pre-pro meetings, right? And you're in September now.
Pre-pro's done. We're actually in New York City for a month and a half, 2 months before the tour starts, getting all these pieces together.
Okay.
Then we move to Omaha and actually Council Bluffs, the Mac Center, which fortunately is always available. We've been there for about 12 years. And we go in, we arrange them. If you can imagine, we have about 250 to 300 people arriving at the Omaha airport within a couple of days. And parcels and packages and UPSs and FedExes, they know we're coming to town.
So you have you're building 2 full-on tours at the Mac Center at one time. All your bells and whistles.
And the beauty of this is we'll stagger it slightly. So we'll put the rigging up, we'll put the stage up on the East Coast because they bug out first. And then we'll notice if something is wrong, we don't take it down and fix it right away. We adjust on the West Coast and take notes. So when the West Coast sets up their stage, any problems or any issues we've had, they've adjusted already. So,
and what's actually happening is that you are setting these stages up inside the Mac Center end to end, facing one another.
Facing one another. The only thing we can't put sometimes is our front of house gags. They have to go on the side dashers. But yeah, we're hanging 300 pounds. You know, we're hanging 300 pounds sometimes on
300,000.
Yeah, 300,000 pounds. Yeah, in these buildings. So we'll counter program the rest of the show, the rest of the rehearsal time, by one band going and doing rehearsals in a big locker room with their in-ears, and then both of them do it. Then we'll finally get the East on the stage, then the West on the stage. Brian Hartley will sit and program the East Coast stage, but at the same time, the West Coast band is playing behind him. So it's a very unusual circumstance where the band members actually get to see what's going on in the stage because they're on the stage. So they will be playing a song and looking across the arena, and the actual lights, pyro, video content, everything will be running to what they're playing.
Wow.
Yeah. And sometimes towards the end, once we get everything done, we will run both sides at the same time. But they will stretch from one side of the arena to the other side of the arena. There won't be any airspace whatsoever. As a matter of fact, sometimes we have to stagger some front of house trusses so we can actually fit everything in the arena at one time.
That's really cool. I personally am geeking out over learning that TSO sets up their shows end to end, and that, you know, the concept of the West Coast band, watching Brian Hartley program honest, that is, to me, is absolutely really mind-blowing. All right, so here we are.
It's a little different. Yeah,
it's super different.
Yeah, we're not that with a square going into the round peg. So we've had to invent a lot of things, and the methods we do things, you know, it's sometimes not exactly the way your normal touring is, but the basis is there. You know, we're all touring, we're all getting in buses, getting out of buses, setting up lights and sound and dressing rooms and everything like that. It's just our schedule gets a little crazier than most.
Elliot, do you happen to have a photo you can share of the end-to-end business?
You know, I was trying to get that. I have a quick clip that may be able to show you. It's really quick. So let's hope we can see that.
You should be able to share fine.
Yeah, let me open this first.
Fascinating.
Yeah. Okay, and share screen. Okay, here we go. Okay.
Oh, so wow. Okay.
This is I believe this is last year. Okay, so this is the East Coast. You can see the chairs on the table, and I'll play it again if we have to, because it was done for a different purpose. But here you go.
Okay, there it is. Wow. Oh, that's cool.
That's amazing. That is so epic. The
Wow.
That was
magnitude
really cool.
Yeah.
of everything
So-
that's going on in there.
So yeah, so you definitely have you don't definitely you have 40 trucks in that arena
Right.
of equipment, and sometimes more, because coming down there may be 50 trucks bringing everything down. You know
Right.
what I mean? And so we'll be there for 2.5 weeks, and from then on, that's it. It's if you've ever watched those shows where you see speed chess, and you see the old man hit the button, and it's the other guy's turn. Well, that's how it works with TSO. From the time we
fun.
leave to the time they start on the East Coast, I'm usually on the West Coast. Sometimes I'll travel to the East. The clock starts. You hit that button, and everything is automatic pilot. We talked before about using our yellow pads and our yellow pads and taking notes. And partially for me, it's the 70s were very tough, and I can't remember things walking out of the room. So all we write the stuff. But the strange thing happens. Once that tour starts, the yellow pad disappears. I don't make
Interesting.
notes anymore. Everything is just so well oiled, and we don't change from year to year any of our methodology about how we do things, and it works for us. And we don't want to ever stray from that, because you go 2 degrees the wrong way and you jeopardize a show. We have never done 20 years of winter shows. We've never lost a show.
Wow.
Okay. Only once did we have to postpone a show, and luckily the venue was open, and what happened was we had to do 10 shows in a row, and the crew didn't have a problem with it. Like I said, we've got Kenny Ackerman, our video guy, 14 years with me. Jeff Boguski, 19 years. David Como, 14 years. Jeff Snyder, one of our production coordinators, now is a road manager, 15 years.
And you spoke yesterday to that point about creating a family on TSO.
Everything is, and this came from Paul O'Neill. Paul O'Neill was a very gentle man. He was a philanthropist. We do $1 a show from day one. We've given over $15 million to charities. And when you go into, and we have to play some of the smaller venues in the early part of November, but if you do a small venue of 7,000, you're doing a matinee, you're doing 14,000, you can make your money, But if we go into Youngstown and we give it to the women's shelter, well, that'll be the biggest donation we'll have all year. So it makes a difference. Paul would always take his wallet out and make sure everybody was taken care of. The matinees, look, there's people that go in at 6 o'clock in the morning and work the crazy hours that we work, and nobody even says thank you. We say thank you, and we give them a substantial amount of money for each show that they do as a matinee. So their matinee pay is equivalent to some people on the road's weekly pay. So everybody's taken care of. It's not a matter of we're buying their loyalty. They'll do it anyway. That's just taken care of all the time. Meals, Christmas time, they bring their families down. We have 120 people. We have a Christmas meal. We have a Thanksgiving meal. When we're able to be in New York, we have 140 people at Carmine's restaurant upstairs. It's a fantastic meal. Everybody has a great time. Hotels, band and crew stay in the same hotels. Always high quality. Buses, high quality. Catering is, as I said, it's customized. Wonderful, wonderful food. Everybody keeps healthy. The vegans, the vegetarians, the health stuff, it's all there for them. We have to. We can't let anybody go down on this tour. If they go down on this tour, we have a big problem. So family-wise, this is the first year in 20 years that I'll be with my family for Christmas and New Year's. But it'll also be the first year in 20 years that I won't have Brian Hartley sitting at my Thanksgiving Day table and my Christmas table. And as important as it is to be with your family, when you really have a road family, you know, you're going to be thinking about not being with them just on that one day, because it means so much to everybody. It's a chance to kick back, have a good meal, dress up a little bit. The truck drivers, the bus drivers, everybody's there, families, and it's the way to keep everybody's morale up.
I love to do Thanksgiving on the road with the folks.
It's
too.
I do.
If I wish I would have put it up, but I maybe too much information. But in our tour book that we give out, itinerary tour book to everybody, it has our little rules and do this and do that. You know, don't poop on the bus and make sure the door's locked, things like that, because you never know. Even though we have all the pros, it says that everybody has to be treated with respect. The guy at the backstage door, the old man sweeping up the room, they are to be treated with the same respect as a band member. And if a band member or any crew member is caught disrespecting anybody, then they come to the principal's office. Okay? It's very important. That's Paul's legacy. That's how he wanted to do things. He always called everybody sir. He would walk up to a security guard and say, "Excuse me, sir, do you think it'd be possible?" Like, who is this guy? You know what I mean? So that's kind of the legacy we kept up. We have a great time out there. You know, as I said, we have guys 14, 15, 18, 20 years. You know, the other thing is you worry about the integrity of the crew. We vet every single crew member that comes on, if it's a new person that comes on, or if it's an old person that's had some problems, or there's always some changes that come about in a person's personality. But we don't have to do that. Once we're in rehearsals, we don't have to self-police. They'll police. They'll come up and say, "Elliot, I had to send this guy home." Why? He wasn't going to make it. They felt, they've done it before, that he didn't have the right attitude, or he didn't have the strength or the skill set to do it. And they'll say, "Elliot, we're replacing somebody before we even leave the rehearsals." So very important to keep the crew morale up. Like I say, when you're doing 8 shows a day, sleep deprivation, very difficult, but they've learned. They know how to take advantage of it. They're road dogs, and they'll get that sleep. And if anybody has a problem, they'll relieve them. So we keep that continuity up of having people. It makes their day faster, easier, and it puts a smile on everybody's face at the end of the day, even though they've worked 16, 18, 20 hours.
Elliot, thank you so much. And to all our panelists today, you guys, really the cream of the crop. Debbie Taylor, Chris Gratton, Elliot with TSO. This is a big, really heavy hitting bunch of people. So I want to give a couple of moments just to answer some questions. Blue had a question about how, and I think Elliot, this one's going to come for you. How far in advance do you decide a B-rig aside from when it's rated for snow load?
Okay. What happens is when I'm on the road in December, if I was on the road in December this year, I would be getting, along with the guys in else, the avails for next year already. So we will know by February, we'll have 98% of our dates already placed. All my dates are set for next year. Okay. All my dates. So we'll know the venues. Out of all the venues we do, we'll maybe have a change of 1 or 2 or 3 venues, a new venue, you know, NASA goes down, Belmont's coming up, you know, stuff like that. So we will have our pre-rigs. They will go out before the contracts, before the promoter letters go out. By about March and April, we will know exactly where, and we put on a Google Doc, where we will get a pre-rig, where we need a pre-rig, whether it's 4 hours before, the day before, if we happen to be in a city and the guys want to do it that way. So the short answer is we're very lucky. We'll usually by March and April, our agent will have a document saying, please look for this at this time or this day for a pre-rig.
Okay, and I think if I'm reading correctly, we were talking about B rigs, right? Blue, are you still with us? Have we answered the question? Is there a part 2 to that before we move on? Yep, B rig. Okay, so a B rig. Do you have a B rig on TSO?
Well, the B rig is what we're talking about. Is
Okay.
the pre-rig package? I'm assuming that's what they're talking about.
Well, she's
Is the
saying,
pre-
so if a venue can only hold 150 pounds, so she's looking to know about your, like, oh, do you have an alternative rig or no?
Years ago, and not so many years ago, we've had situations where there's a problem. We don't have any venues. We have maybe one we have to worry about snow loads. We have adjusted in a couple of buildings, and it's thought out in advance because we know what buildings we're going to do, and we said, "Uh-oh, you know what? We can't hang our turrets out there, you know, or we have to do something." Then we'll know in advance to do that. It's not necessarily a B rig. We will just redact a portion here, a portion there to make it work.
Chris Grattan, how do you handle a B rig? Just real quick.
We oftentimes do have a B rig, a B or C rig, and it's just usually a manipulation of the gear that's out there. So there's no extra cost. So like knowing that the different trim heights on the different scoreboards and the width and all those dimensions and diameters, then we go into the tour fully prepared for A, B, and C always.
Right. And then also one of the things that we chatted about with particularly yesterday with Debbie Taylor was part of looking at that routing when you get it and learning what those shows are is also learning about the surprise parties that are in there. For example, what about that weird club date that just is randomly slipped into the routing on the middle of an arena tour, or that award show on the other end of the country that somehow is going to happen on the one day off on the East Coast and it's on the West Coast. So to talk about your secondary or tertiary rigs and also looking at your routing and knowing when you're going to have a surprise party on your hands.
And I think that again comes with experience, being able to read a routing. Right. And knowing where you are going to need fewer people, core team, especially if you're flying to somewhere weird and wonderful for a small show and you don't need to have to take everybody with you.
Right.
But again, that comes with experience.
Right.
I think in our case, we thrive on those things because when you're in the zone and you're coming, you know, everything is just working great. You kind of walk around and go, what's going on? And then you hear a truck's down, you know, 150 miles out. Well, then you see 10 guys jump into this mode that you've never seen before. And in the back of their minds, they go, a truck's 150 miles away. There's no way that these 10 people in a room can't figure out how to get the truck there in time, you know? And they make it happen. And it's almost like this little adrenaline thing that says it's a problem, but you know what? We can deal with it. And at the end of the day, if you wanted it, my job is at the end of the day, I'm a problem solver.
Right on.
That's what you hear. So I may solve 50 problems, 100 problems a day. Stage manager, 20 problems a day. It's knowing how to solve the problems because there will be problems, and history on knowing how to solve the problems right. So I kind of enjoy when there's a little, hey, guess what, guys? You finish up in Buffalo, your last show on the 30th, and then you're getting on a private jet and flying to Berlin to play New Year's Eve that night, you know, with the time change, you know, and we go, great, bring it on, let's do it.
And I wanted to just quickly add, I think, Debbie, I like what you said there about learning how to read a routing. And I think also, Chris, when you were talking about having your B and your C rig ready to go, that's an interesting point between the 2 points, actually, because by their very nature, a lot of these types of opportunities come up last minute. When you're on the road, you know, there might be an underplay, you know, the word that strikes fear into every touring person's dreams, underplay, you know, that means fitting this much into this much. You know, you might be touring arenas and your band wants to do a club show for a release or something. And those opportunities quite often come up while you're on the road. So having a plan, being adaptable, even if you don't see it on the routing, planning for it means that when it inevitably comes up, then you've got a plan. farther
Yeah,
scenario.
Guns N' Roses, we had that all the time. Half the time acts would get off stage 3, 4, 5 in the morning. Say, no, I want to go do a club. And you'd be in London. So we always had a second. We had a club band gear, a club little lighting rig and sound rig that we always carried with us, like always standing.
And I know
Sounds worse than-
5-1 has stories from the Prince days about several in a night, probably.
Wow. Well, thank you guys all so much for coming and spending a little time with us on this fine Monday morning. I think this was one of our most informative, deeper dives as we get into really the nuts and bolts of building these big, amazing tours. Hi, Ray Amico. It's good to see you too.
It's such an inspirational episode for us, and I'm sure our students as well. It is an honor to have all of y'all on board with us today. For everyone who's been with us from the beginning, thank you for being here with us as we've continued on into the fall semester. We'll be back on Monday. You know the drill. We'll be posting everything across our socials and prep for next Monday, and we'll be back with new guests and continuing the conversation. So thank
Hit
you,
the Zoom
everyone.
wave,
for
waving
being
out.
with us.
Thank you guys. Have a
We'll see
fantastic
you
week.
next week.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks, guys. Bye.
Thanks all.